So I'm going to start with the latter item, as I hinted at this in a previous post, and I mentioned this in John McMullan's in the previous episode of this podcast. And by this, I'm referring to a notice that appeared in a Georgia newspaper in 1841. While I was searching the newspaper archives for my ancestor, David Dobbs, I came upon a court order from the inferior court of Elbert County, Georgia, that was published on page 3 of the Washington News and Planters Gazette, November 18th, 1841 edition. Here, this was the local paper of record for the county of Elbert, and this court order demands that 12 men and 1 woman appear in the court to plead, demur, and answer to said bill. So this is what the way it was written. It was demanding that these people appear in the court to, quote, plead, demur, and answer to said bill. And the case that it's referencing is that of Barnabas Barron and his wife, Millie, the former Millicent McMullan. And it uses a Latin term, uxor, U-X-O-R. And I had to look that one up. And it basically meant wife. And so it's the way of noting that Barnabas Barron and Millie Uxor, Uxor, it doesn't even give her last name, and then versus these other people. So it's identifying her as his wife, and it's really, her name wouldn't be on here if it wasn't her relatives that were being sued. And the people listed were William McMullan, and William is listed as the administrator of the estate. And then James Prather and his wife, Elizabeth, who's listed as the administratrix, gives the feminine of administrator, administratrix. And then it says, etc., of the estate of Patrick McMullan, deceased. Now, the etc., are people, not things, and they are identified in the body of this order. There are 13 other adults, and the other 4 who are not named in the lawsuit are the minor children. So the court case mentioned in the newspaper in 1841 is referenced twice in the probate records for Patrick's estate, but there are no details as to what the case was about. So we're left in the dark as to why this lawsuit was brought about. And because it appears that it was resolved amicably to the benefit of Mr. Barron and his wife to the tune of $98.65, which even greater benefit was enjoyed by the court, because the court took in $300 for whatever it did to resolve the case. So they had to pay back then you would have to pay a lawyer, and then if the judgment was against you, then you'd have to pay the court for, I guess, I don't know, wasting its time or something. I don't know. The first indication of any kind of a problem with the estate occurs in images number 167 and 169. And this shows a bond of $50,000 being posted by, looks like 6 men: William McMullan, Jeremy S. Warren, Sinclair McMullan, Joseph R. Holm, David Dobbs, and William White. And the document is dated September 1837, and it shows that it grants temporary letters of administration of the estate to 3 men: William McMullan, David Dobbs, and William White. Now, David Dobbs married Elizabeth McMullan in Elbert County, I think in 1830. No, in 18, I know exactly when, 1819. And at the time, here in 1837, they've already been granted this land in the what was previously the Cherokee Nation, the territory of the Cherokee Indians. And the Indians had been forcibly moved out now, and now, so 1837, so now David and Elizabeth are preparing to go to Cobb County, which is in this former territory, now in the west of the Chattahoochee River, the northwest of the Chattahoochee River. And they're in the process of relocating to this newly formed Cobb County beyond the Chattahoochee River. And so now he's being named a temporary administrator of the estate. I'm sorry. I'm just going to read this the way I've written it. Shortly after being named a temporary, okay, stop. Shortly after being named, stop again. Shortly after being named a temporary administrator of the estate, David Dobbs and Barnabas Barron addressed a letter to all the other legatees, informing them to take notice that they, the undersigned, applied to the court of Elbert County for a division of the Negro property. Put that in quotes, division of the Negro property, belonging to the estate of Patrick McMullan. 4 months later, the court appointed 5 men to do the appraisement of the human property of the estate. So when I saw this, that seemed to that brought to light what possibly could have been the original reason for this lawsuit. And so that it appears that someone had originally come up with a number for how much the enslaved people could be sold for. And I think that threw up a lot of red flags with David Dobbs and Barnabas Barron. And I think that lawsuit by Barnabas and his wife against everybody else in the beginning was over this. And then the 2 men came to this idea that they were going to basically take charge of dividing up the quote-unquote Negro property. So this is the thing that seems to have triggered the request by David Dobbs and the other man for a court-appointed appraisement of the quote-unquote Negro property. And the reason for this, the thing that seems to have triggered it, is that an earlier inventory appraised the total value of the 25 individuals at a mere $147. This paltry sum is confirmed in the final tally at the bottom of the 3rd page of the inventory. The court appointed 5 men to conduct the appraisement. In January, the court posted an estimate of the value of the human property at $13,475, divided equally among 17 legatees. That was said to come out to, and they tallied this on the paper, $792.64 each. I guess that my guess is, assuming that the slaves were sold at auction, I guess, I see. Okay. So this figure of $792.64 each appears to be assuming that the slaves were sold at auction. However, that does not appear to be how things went down. So one assessment was given for these 25 individuals, $147, and a second one comes up with a figure that's estimated to be $13,475, and that is a huge discrepancy. So based on how I read the documents and focusing on the second appraisement, it appears that the slaves were not sold. And it looks like some remained with the estate, basically working on one of the plantations, or they were hired out. And they didn't spell hired the same way we do today. It's spelled Highered, hired. And it looks like some were given, slaves were given to one of the people, one of his heirs of the estate. And so, for example, you have a boy named Wigan, who in the original appraisement was valued at $9. And in the second appraisement, this young man is valued at $800. Ultimately, he was allotted to one of the miners, William Marion McMullan. We know what happened to William Marion McMullan. He grew up, became an old man, and died on his plantation. I think he went down to Mississippi. But we don't know what happened to Wigan. His name does show up a couple of times in the will, and we'll get to that. One entry shows my ancestor David Dobbs receiving an enslaved man named Henry, who was valued at $900. And just for reference purposes, if we look at $900 in January of 1838, and we compare that to what that amount of money would be worth in 2021, we're looking at $24,419. So $900 in 1838 is equivalent to $24,419.44 in 2021 dollars. There's another entry that shows that David Dobbs hired Negro girl Lazar for 6 1/4 cents. I'm not sure what hired means, but I think it's like renting a human being for 1 year. None of this can be explained without some other context to back it up. So I'm not going to speculate on anything. Following are the names of the shadow cast of characters, human property in William McMullan's estate. I noted the names of all of the enslaved people, and they're just first names. We have Jenkins, Henry, Wigan, Stephen, Liberty, Henderson, Martin, Thompson, Wyatt, Seaborn, Lydia, Mitchell, Eliza, Louisa, Emily, Nancy, Ron, Prissy, Viana, Lizar, Harriet, Pleasant, Liller, and Tilda. The inventory of Patrick's personal property reads fairly standard for a mid-century Southern plantation. There is livestock listed and household goods, including a still, appraised at $25. One very interesting page within the records is a page titled Sale of the Lands Belonging to the Estate of Patrick McMullan, died in Elbert County, sold on the first Tuesday of August 1838 on a credit until 25 December 1838. The page lists 4 tracts that were sold from the estate. It appears each tract has a name such as the Freeman tract and the Roundtree tract. The largest of the tracts is the Prince tract at 377.5 acres. The 4 tracts total 1,000 acres. In one of the other documents, the Jackson tract is referred to as Jackson Plantation. Okay, and well, I see by the old clock on the wall that we've run out of time again, and I'm sorry, but we have to end the episode here. But if you enjoyed watching this episode, don't forget to hit the like button down below, and please, please subscribe. Thank you, and goodbye.